Hello, ball watchers. Welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Justin Graham, going solo again today as Jake and I are still working on trying to figure out our schedules a little bit more. But we have a packed episode and we're talking about the recap of the FC Dallas game, an awful 2-0 loss down there. And then we're also going to preview the Colorado Rapids game that we have this coming Wednesday. And there's a lot of other news that's been coming out in the most recent days. I think it's kind of a blessing in disguise looking back on Jake and I not being able to connect yesterday with Father's Day, but now recording today, allowing for some more news to drop. So I'm actually going to be pretty quick with the recap of this FC Dallas game. I think, in my opinion, no one really wants to think about it again or talk about it. I'm just going to get us with a quick highlights, lowlights, starting 11s, things like that. Obviously, the injuries and everything and where we go from here. And then move into the city news and into the preview of our game against the Colorado Rapids on Wednesday back at City Park. So starting off with the game in FC Dallas, our Hoffman brothers starting 11. We were pretty spot on. You look at Berkey, Watts, Nilsson, Parker, and Totlin across the back with Blum and Leuven in front of them, with Celio, Kojima, and Indy up top, with Klaus on top in front of them as well. This was a little bit more interesting one where you see Indy playing a lot more on the left side and Celio on the right side, which is almost inverted to what they have been playing for the majority of this season and last season. I think it was something that maybe Carnell's looking to switch up. We've talked about it to where both obviously Celio being right-footed and Indy being left-footed. If you put them on the other sides of the field, they have a better chance to beat guys, cut inside, and rip a shot. Now you're seeing this. It's like, all right, maybe we use Klaus more as our big man up top. You let Celio beat someone down the right, Indy beat someone down the left, and whip in across from there. So it was interesting to see a little bit of a change up there from Carnell, and I think it's at this point it said what can work. And unfortunately, we will not be seeing that starting 11 again the rest of the season with the Celio injury. But before the Celio injury, I would say a first quick highlight that we have was Kojima in the 12th minute, finds space, he absolutely rips a shot just a few feet wide, but I love seeing his confidence. And this is a guy that, as we talk about the rest of the season now with a shortened, depleted team based on injuries and now transfers, as we'll touch on, Kojima is going to have to step up in that role and be someone that can help find some creativity, especially before we have some of the other guys coming in July. But then the biggest low light of the game, 16th minute, Celio goes for a challenge, gets his foot caught underneath the defender, forcing a gruesome injury for him. And Thor comes on there. I'll touch on his injury a little bit more after the recap of this game. And then in the 28th minute, the FC Dallas goal. Ball over the top that Nilsson does pretty well to body Paul Arriola off the ball. The ref calls it for a PK. Was not actually turned over in the VAR review. And there's a couple different things in this game that I think we're going to try to touch on with George Gansner sometime in the next week or two, just for a lot of these calls. And I think there's a lot of videos that are on Twitter and all over the internet now that we're kind of complaining or comparing calls that we've received compared to ones that are not called for us. So that's something that we can touch on with George later. But ultimately, Ferreira slots home that PK. He buries it in the 28th minute, and we are down 1-0 on the road against FC Dallas. 36th minute, another awful little low light here with Nilsson pulling up with a hamstring injury, so forcing Yarrow to come on as our other center back with Tim Parker. And then in the 38th minute, mentioning Tim Parker, though, I think a great highlight for him. He does a great step up on an FC Dallas pass that's trying to break lines for us. He one-times a 30-yard pass directly to Klaus's feet. That breaks two lines of the FC Dallas defense, and then Klaus then turns and lets a shot rip, which I actually appreciate. I feel like we've talked about a lot of his shots being kind of haywire, not landing on net. This was a great one, forcing Paz to make a great diving save towards the far post. And we have some other highlights and lowlights. I would say that Leuven had a couple great crosses as well, but I really don't feel the need to touch on all of this as we kind of get into the additional time that was added because of the Celio injury. In the 45th +8, Berkey has a save on Ferreira that he was able to chest down and ping towards goal as well. So then another great save there by Berkey, and he made plenty of those all night. In the 45 +10, this one was a little bit more frustrating, I think, for everybody as we talk about the Totlin cross, and the FC defender knees it off his outstretched hand. No review for a PK, false Kojima, close, but over the top of the bar. We're going to have to talk to George about that one because it did look like it made his body a little bigger. However, there are some more direct rules about when the ball is coming off of your body that is not from your foot. So we will touch on that with George. And then the 45th +12 minute, Leuven had a free kick that was struck well. forcing Paz to make a save, but it's good to see that Leuven is still taking that confidence even from 30-ish yards out and putting one up over the wall. Honestly, then going from then, I'm going to jump all the way to the 72nd minute. We have an absolute low light on Paul Arriola. He puts a low light for us. Paul Arriola curls the ball into Musa, who is just barely offsides, making a run into the box. Pretty tricky by Musa. He holds up the ball, flicks it up to himself with Yarrow right on his back, centers it, and there was a finish. Was called back for VAR on the offsides. And that's where I was like, all right, that's our silver lining. This is our time to go. They almost put us away there. Let's see if we can get there. You see the subs come on just 5 minutes later. Adinran, AZ, and Klein all come on for Kojima, Blum, and Klaus. I was not a huge fan of bringing Adinran on for Klaus there. I understand it's down in Dallas. It was hot, but I thought Klaus was actually playing relatively decent in this game, getting chances, getting shots off, working the ball up top as well. And then, unfortunately, we've seen this so many times this season where just 4 minutes after our subs come on, an FC Dallas goal. Corner swung in by Leggett and a free header there. If you go back and look at it, I think you see like Watson, Yarrow kind of like throwing their hands at each other. Like, how did you not mark him? How did you not mark him? But it was really Indy. Indy was the guy that was right on him. And then as the ball starts being hit off the foot of the corner, for some reason, Indy decides to drift a little bit more towards where the ball is coming from, leaving Tafari to drift to the back post, and just a nice, easy header for him. Back across goal, nothing Berkey can do there, and we fall 2-0. So overall, obviously a lot of lowlights. I will say when you look at it more specifically on the stats side of things, it looks like we dominated this game. We have just a little bit more XG of 1.63 than their 1.27. We had 57% of the possession, which we kind of figured was going to happen with this FC Dallas team. We had 21 total shots. However, only 8 of those are landing on goal. We had 3 total big chances. All 3 of them were obviously missed. 2 of those were by Klaus. However, when it says missed big chances, I do think that these saves that Paz was putting on, he actually had a great game for them with a total of 8 saves. And I think a lot of those were a little bit closer to point blank and or ones where Klaus was actually ripping pretty decent shots. So we had more corners than them. We already talked about it, that we had basically everything more than them except for actually putting the ball away, which has been a struggle for this team this season. Talking about player ratings more in general, they have Berkey at a 5.7. I think it's tough. Obviously, one of the goals is a PK and one's a wide open header from a corner kick. So I don't think Berkey had a horrible game. I think he had some good saves to keep us in it. I would love to see him make a save on a PK. I think that's one that's been a kind of a thorn in his side for his career. But moving up to the back line, I actually thought Watts did well at left back. Nilsson and Parker, not great. Obviously, Nilsson going down early in the 36th minute. I thought Parker did decent in the game. However, he did pick up another yellow, which now, even though he had 5 previously, he had the good behavior rule, and he should be out in our game on Wednesday. So that will make our already depleted lineup even more on that side as well. I thought Totlin played all right as well. Not a lot of highlights or lowlights, even on the ones I skipped over, but did his job. Leuven and Blum, I thought Leuven had a great game. He is my heart and soul juice player of the match. If you have not already gotten Soul Juice, go to souljuice.com and use code BALLWATCHING for 20% off. You can go to Schnucks, Dearberg, Straub's, anywhere around St. Louis, Sam's. He's trying to get in Costco's in St. Louis. He's in Costco's across the U.S. And also, you can just go get it at Mobile on the Run. So go to souljuice.com for 20% off if you cannot get it in stores. But Leuven was my heart and soul juice player of the game. And the reason that I already kind of jumped to that was when you look at Celio, obviously went out early, tough injury. Kojima, Indy, and Klaus, not a whole lot of work there. I do think that Klaus did well to hold the ball up, was able to rip some shots. I did think that he forced Paz to make some good saves. However, we've talked about it time and time again. If you're going to be the starting striker for this team, you have to finish, and I need to see him put one away. But Leuven, more specifically on his stats, he had 6 shots with 3 on target. The other 3 were not off target, but they were blocked. He had 4 total chances created, 10 recoveries to show that he's absolutely getting back on defense as well. And he continued to provide great service, not only on corner kicks and set pieces, but also just through the run of play. I love when the ball is at his feet, and he is my heart and soul juice player of the game. Getting into our predictions and Grahammer reviews on this as well. Jake predicted a 3-0 dub, and I predicted a 2-1 dub. So unfortunately, both of us wrong there. And we are just sliding when it comes to betting, because obviously we are betting for our team, and our team is not producing right now. So Jake was City money line in the game total over 1.5 at plus 255. Game total over 1.5 hit. Money line did not, so we lost the bet there. I bet our team total over 1.5 at plus 140 because I'm waiting for this team to wake up and score some goals. But both we are taking L's there. However, we were still both in the green on the season, so we will look to bounce back this week as we have the game that we will now start to preview for the Colorado Rapids. And before I get into the more specific preview of this upcoming game on Wednesday, back at City Park, looking for the boys to bounce back, we have some news that has dropped recently in the past 24 to 48 hours on a couple of these. First one, and probably the biggest one, is Marcel Hartel. The news dropped by Emmanuel Veth over at Transfermarkt. He is worth 4 million euros, which we've seen risen from 1.8 million euros last year. And he would be a DP signing for City since the end of his, and it would also be technically a free transfer over because it is at the end of his contract over in Germany. However, it is no longer going to be free because, as we have learned with the MLS, they have these discovery rights. So discovery rights are basically, I hate the word discovery because I first came really to know about it when we talked about Marco Reus. Like, the Charlotte did not discover Marco Reus. This is a guy that is a world-class player. So the whole discovery rights thing there. But unfortunately, the Columbus Crew were actually looking to have a deal with Hartel earlier in the season for 1.5 million. The deal fell through, but they still have his discovery rights. So the only reason now that we would have to, if we want to sign Hartel, which it seems like we are in pretty deep talks too, we'll have to spend $350,000 to pay the Crew for his discovery rights, which is exactly the amount that LA Galaxy paid Charlotte for Marco Reus's rights. So more specifically on Hartel, and it seems like this deal will be kind of finalized here in the next week or so, which is great news for us as you look into his stats. He's a key player for St. Pauli, who is in the 2 Bundesliga league, where he actually just helped them get promoted to the Bundesliga with Bayern, with Dortmund, with teams like that. He has had 21 goals and 15 assists in all competitions this season. He's a former teammate of Joachim Nielsen, and he shares the same agent as Marco Reus. So this is a guy that obviously Luce has had kind of tags on and already has connections with, and I would love to see him come over and play for us. And we will talk a little bit more about him as that deal progresses and becomes a little bit more finalized. Talking about guys that we already have on the team but will not have for a shorter stint coming up is Kyle Hebert getting called into the Canadian national team Copa America squad. Their first game is this Thursday, June 20th, versus Argentina. And the last group stage game for them is on June 29th versus Chile. So he will miss the next 3 games, including Rapids, Atlanta, and Vancouver, after he already missed this past game against FC Dallas. And that's at a minimum that he will miss these next 3 games for us. So 4 total. And it could actually progress even more depending on how Canada does in that tournament. Another big piece of news, absolutely massive, that dropped today. Per Tom Bogart, the Columbus Crew are looking to acquire AZ from our team for a $650K in GAM guaranteed, and there could also be some add-ons on top there. I think this is one of those things where we've talked about it. We signed AZ for, I think it was around $180K from Minnesota, and obviously just within a season has grown to almost triple his total value there, and actually just slightly over triple his total value, which is great to see that we are a breeding ground for that. However, it does make me a little nervous. You saw the tweet that Jake put out this morning that also it's going to be tough for us to see that the Columbus Crew, that's already a team that has won the Cup last year, did very well, obviously, in the Champions League tournament this year. And now we're just going to be giving them AZ, who is a guy that has been slightly underperforming for us, but also not able to get in that starting 11. And it's going to be difficult to see if he fits right in there for the Crew. But huge congrats to AZ as he progresses on his career. And it sounds like that deal will be finalized here shortly as well. And then obviously, lastly, the one that I mentioned earlier, the saddest one, especially for me, my favorite player on City, Celio Pompeo, has now been confirmed that he underwent a successful surgery on his dislocated ankle and fractured fibula, which had to be one of the most excruciating, painful injuries I've seen on a field for a team that I've followed that closely. He will be out for 9 months, which is obviously the rest of this season, and could be even out for a little bit early into next season. And you look at the timeline. So hoping a quick and speedy recovery, very safe recovery for Celio. That's a tough one to watch for us with how well he has been playing for us and how dangerous he has been for us for a team that we've obviously been lacking scoring goals. And he's been one that's actually been creating those chances. So an extremely tough one for us. And we'll get into the starting 11 for the Rapids later, but starting to look pretty light. And obviously I know where everybody's looking forward to having Toyer come, and now it looks like Hartel as well, but that's not till July. So this team has to figure it out in the next month, because the first game that those guys, those newcomers, will be allowed to play in will be at Sporting Kansas City on July 20th. So now more specifically into the Colorado Rapids preview. our last season matches with them, we were first away with a 1-1 draw on April 20th. It was a pretty frustrating night for us. And also that is when we lost Klaus to the long-term injury where he ended up missing 19 games in a row. Came back home on July 1st with a 2-0 dub. Pretty sound win for us, and both goals being in the first 11 minutes, courtesy of Stroud and Parker there. Some offseason departures for this team, kind of seeing how they changed up from those 2 games last year. Jack Price, they parted ways as he was captain. He missed most of the 2023 campaign with an Achilles injury, and he was a set piece specialist for them. Diego Rubio is another guy that they added. So he's electric he off-season departures. He was electric back in 2022 with 16 goals and 7 assists, but he didn't recapture that form last season with injury. He now plays for Austin FC. Will Yarbrough, veteran goalkeeper, suits up for the San Jose Earthquakes nowadays after having 4 seasons as a starter for the Rapids. And then Danny Wilson. He did a half decade with Colorado. It ended in January when they waived their Scottish center back there. So off-season incomings, Mihalovic, they acquired them. They acquired him from the Dutch side. AZ is the name of the team over there. It was a club record transfer fee for $3 million. The attacking midfielder previously played for Chicago Fire and CF Montreal before that, and will be a designated player for them now. Zach Steffen, the 2018 goalkeeper, MLS goalkeeper of the year. He obviously played in the Premier League and for the U.S. men's national team a while back. He was one of those guys that was like up and coming, extremely excited to watch, and possibly become the number 1 goalkeeper for the U.S. But when he got signed for Manchester City, I believe it was back in 2019, he only had 2 caps for them before he's loaned out to Dusseldorf and Middlesbrough. So he's kind of been a shell of himself ever since. Another incomer, Sam Vines, offseason, also part of this huge makeover that the Rapids have been doing. So they got him from the Belgian top flight Royal Antwerp. He's a homegrown standout, previously went through the midway of the MLS season in 2021 before going over to Belgium. And then Lemine Dijk is a defensive midfielder. He's on a 6-month loan from League One sides Natas with a purchase option as well. And so the Senegal Youth International should help kind of provide a little bit more balance and stability in their midfield next to Connor Ronan and Cole Bassett. And then lastly, Omir Fernandez. He's one of the youngest ever free agents, ultimately choosing a reunion in Colorado. He was for the Red Bulls homegrown product. He had 15 goals and 13 assists in 112 matches for them, and now bringing in for the Colorado Rapids. In 2024, more specifically for this team, how have they been doing with these guys that left? And then now the incomers, a way better season than they had last year, and still holding in the mid area for right now. And we'll talk about why here in a sec, but they are 7-7-4 win-loss draw, which gives them 6th in the West with 25 points. Home record of 4-2-2, away record of 3-5-2, so very similar home and away. Their goals for of 31 are 6th most in the MLS, and their goals against of 31, so a 0 goal differential, is 6th most in the MLS as well. And when I say goals against of 6th most, that is not good, but goals for of 31 is impressive. The key results for them more specifically, they played RSL twice this year, a 2-1 dub and a 5-3 loss. RSL obviously still first in the West. They also drew Miami at Miami, who is first in the East. That was a 2-2 draw at Miami. They had a 2-1 loss at Cincinnati, who is currently second in the East as well. And then last weekend, they just took on Austin at home and had a 2-0 dub. Austin is currently sitting 8th in the West. Key players to watch, Rafael Navarro. He's a 24-year-old DP Brazilian striker that the Rapids snagged from the Brazilian club SC Palmeiras. He has 10 goals and 1 assist already for this team. However, 4 of those goals are PK goals, having shot 6 total PKs for the Rapids this season. As a team, they have 7 PKs taken this season, which is the most in the MLS. Navarro, he is 7th most XG in the MLS, starting 17 of his 18 games played so far this year. Mihalovic, we've already talked about him earlier, 25-year-old right-footed homegrown midfielder. They acquired him from Club AZ in January, and previously being with the Fire and FC Montreal before his year in the Netherlands. He has 5 goals and 6 assists for them. He's 5th most in key passes, crosses, and shot-creating actions. As you can tell, those 6 assists, he's a guy that looks to set up Navarro for his 10 goals so far this season. And then another guy that looks to set him up as well is Cole Bassett, the left winger. He's 22-year-old homegrown midfielder, 6 goals, 2 assists in his 6th season at the Rapids. He's number 4 in passes into the final third. He's also number 4 in progressive passes. and number 6 in carrying distance in the MLS as well. So he's a guy that looks to get on the ball and then slot in Navarro for the finish. And looking at their head coach, Chris Armas, he played 250. He had a total of 250 appearances in MLS, mostly for the Chicago Fire. Then after his playing career, he coached for the New York Red Bulls, Toronto, before moving to Man U and a Leeds assistant, then becoming hired in Colorado this season. The formation he typically likes to play is very similar to what we see for City, with a 4 in the back, 2 holding in front, 3 up top, with underneath of the 1 up top there, where that would be Navarro. For their trends and storylines and how they've been going more specifically recently, in their last 5 away games, they are loss, win, loss, loss, loss. 1.1 points per match in away games with a goal differential of -3. So not doing as well away as they've been at home more recently. Their offense of a 1.57 XG per 90 is number 8 in the MLS, and they're scoring a little bit better of that. A 1.71 goals for is number 7 in the MLS per game. Their away form, though, of their 1.47 XG is number 4 in the MLS, scoring a goal every 53 minutes. When do these goals typically come for them? It's literally right around halftime. 31% of their goals for come between the 41st and 50th minute. So thinking about the last 5 minutes and into stoppage time of the first half and the first 5 minutes of the second half. They also, and you could tell that we talked about this with progressive parries and passes into the final third, they have the 3rd shortest distance per shot in the MLS. And that's something that you would typically want to have. You don't want to have a team that's just ripping shots from far away. So they look to get in behind the defense and try to slot one home as well. Set pieces, more specifically, they're number 3 in XG and number 3 in goals for on set pieces. So that's going to be something that we're going to have to mark up on that. We're going to have to tighten up our marking looking at Indiana Vasilev. And overall, top 5 in passes into the final third, into the penalty area, and crosses into the penalty area as well. So that's where it really comes in and kind of shows why they are a team with the best or 3rd shortest shot distance in the MLS. More specifically for their defense, their 1.82 goals against per 90 is 5th worst in the MLS. 6 total goals against, obviously 6th worst total in goals against on the season. On the home form or the away form for them, it's pretty kind of even there. When do they allow most of these goals, though? 29% of these goals against come in the last 15 minutes of the game, from the 70th minute to the 90th minute. In open play, they're number 6 in XGA and number 4 in goals against. And set pieces, they're tied for 5th in goals against at number 6, or 6 total goals there. And I will say, so is this one of the things that is giving up on their defense, or where is this really coming from? And it's kind of surprising and kind of sad to see. So Zach Steffen, his post-shot XG minus goals against is minus 7.8. We've talked about it all season that if you're around 0, that's pretty average. You want to be above 0. That's where Roman Berkey likes to live. However, Zach Steffen has been a shell of himself since 2018 when he went over to Man City. And then I think from them, his confidence really fell off after not starting for the U.S. men's national team and then getting loaned out to Middlesbrough. And it's just been kind of a sad progression for him in his career. So more specifically in this game, what are the keys so that City can actually get a dub? For the love of God, please, on Wednesday at home. Attacking would be our corners and crosses. Colorado is tied for the 4th in corner kick goals allowed and number 6 in crosses. That is a perfect stat for us when you're looking at a Leuven cross and or a Leuven corner or a free kick being swung in. And the one thing that we need to focus on that I already mentioned is set piece defending as well. That is one thing that we need to be tight on these guys and not let Roman Berkey have to pick up the ball out of our net on a point blank wide open header. And I think a big one for everybody listening here is the atmosphere. I think the last game in the Portland, I was not able to attend, but just looking on TV, it did not look like it was full. I don't want these fans to start giving up on this team. We're halfway through the season, plenty of time to go. I really do think that we need to make an away game absolute hell for these Colorado Rapids, and that is something that we can all do. And are just being at the stadium, around the field, everything. We need to be loud, and I would say if we can do that, I think another key to our game would be to hopefully score early. Just like our game last season, I think it would be huge if we could let City Park erupt in the first 20 minutes. It would really put Colorado in their place, and it'd be a tough road match for them to come back from. If we score early, I think the crowd gets into it early, and it all just kind of snowballs for them, and it's even better for us. And then lastly, if we do score first, or if we don't, we need to finish out these games. This is not one of those ones where we score early and then we let them linger around, and then the 70th minute we're parking the bus and bringing on a 5th defender. I think that if we score, we need to go up early and then step on their throats and get a second, third, fourth goal. And we'll talk about that as we get into the betting of the game. But first, I'm going to bring us to our Hoffman Brothers starting 11. We've talked about it all season already. If you haven't called Hoffman Brothers, you need to call them now. It is now that time of year where we are at the highs in the mid to upper 90s every day in the next week and a half with no rain in sight. The lows are in the 70s. If you're already getting a little worried, like, oh, I don't know if my AC is keeping up, call the Hoffman Brothers at 314-664-3011 or go to hoffmanbros.com. That's HOFFMANNBROS.com. They will hook you up, and it is white glove service. It is the absolute best. If you want to call and get their home protection plan, you get bumped up on anything that comes up, and you can get the #1 service in St. Louis from the Hoffman Brothers. This is going to be an interesting starting 11. I mean, obviously Berkey in goal, but as I already mentioned, we are now going to be without Tim Parker from a yellow card count. We are also out without Celio for his injury, and we're also out without Nilsson with his hamstring injury as well. So I'm actually going to go with, and I know that I would say that Marcanic has been our mainstay at the left. However, obviously we started Watts last game. I'm going to go with Watts again this game. And then I'm going to go with Yarrow and Nerwinski in the middle because I don't know what else we really have to put there as of right now with Hebert gone on the national team for Canada as well. And then I'm going to put Totland back at the right. Then looking at Blum and Leuven in front of that back four. And then I hate to say it, but I do think that this is the game that Thor gets his start. I really thought it could have been Sam, but the fact that when Celio got injured, that Carnell went straight to Thor, I think that is kind of telling in this sense. And I think that's kind of how Jake and I realized that it was probably going to be Watts starting at left back this time as well. So I will go Indy on the left with Kojima and Thor on the right with Klaus up top for our starting 11. And with that being a little bit more of a shaky starting 11, that kind of brings me into my prediction for the game of a 3-2 dub. I really do think, and yes, I'm probably just predicting with my heart. I'm going to try not to bet with it, but I do think that this is going to be a game that has a lot of goals. We talk about the attacking prowess of the Rapids, and I think this is a game that could be a good bounce back for us. Yes, it doesn't seem like it's or obviously it's not our best starting 11. However, we have a lot of guys that are hungry to get minutes, and I do think that if we can get one early on Zach Steffen, we can let it pile on. However, I think they're going to bounce back with us as well. So I'm going with a 3-2 dub at home on Wednesday versus the Colorado Rapids. Looking at the betting lines, I was shocked to see that we are this heavy of a favorite. We are -105 to win the game. Colorado is +235 in the draw at +275 with the over of 2.5 being -190 and the under at +150. That means that Vegas also thinks there's going to be goals there. However, I'm going to take that even a little bit higher, and I'm going to take for my Grahammer bet of the game total to be over 3.5 goals. I think there's going to be a minimum of 4 goals in this game. That's at +125. And I think it's going to be an exciting game on a Wednesday at City Park. So if you cannot get to the game, get to the pitch right across the street from there. I'll be having a nice beverage and dinner before the game there. I was just there this past weekend watching the Euros and the U.S. Open, and now Copa America is going to be starting back up. The pitch is the place to be. Whenever there was a commercial for any of the Euros at halftime, we would just switch it over to the Cardinals game or to the U.S. Open. It's the iPads on the wall. It's the best place to watch games. You can change the channel anytime you want. Some of the best service and best food around the area as well. So get to the pitch on Wednesday and for the weekend upcoming with all of this soccer. It is the place to be. They keep it in an icebox in there as well. You know that the heat's rising. Get to the pitch and get some drinks and food. And then also go to series6company.com using code BALLWATCHING for 15% off their gear. We've donned their t-shirts, their polos, everything that you can get from Series 6. It's an awesome company and supporting local as well. So go support Sammy and team at series6company.com using code BALLWATCHING for 15% off. And that concludes it. Brought us all the way through all of this in under 30 minutes. Like I said, not much of a recap for that FC Dallas game, but I really do think that this can be a bounce back game for these fellas. Yes, we have some reinforcements coming later in July, but without AZ looking like he's leaving, and obviously with the injuries to Nilsson and Celio, and we're missing Hebert, and obviously I think Parker's going to be out on a yellow card suspension. I think this is a game where City finds a way, which is something that we have yet to do this season. We did it a ton last year. We have plenty of guys with talent that are hungry to play in this game, and I think we need to take it to Colorado on Wednesday, get to City Park, get to the pitch, and if not, we'll catch you all for the recap of this game on Thursday, all for City.